He's so in verse number 12 we see the word moghasha mogha karmano mogha jnana vichetasaha. So a person becomes bewildered. Bewildered means he is perplexed, he is confused, he is not sure what is what. What reason? Because he does not know the supreme position of the Supreme Lord. Every hope that he is hoping, it is like hope against the hope. He is trying to hope that he is going to get this, but when he actually is endeavoring for all that, in the end he is finding it's not really true. So his hope is baffling. So is his activities. He is hoping that I will work in this way and I will achieve the fruit of that, which is all happiness, all peace, everything. But in the end, he does not find what he is looking for. He is baffled in his activities. And people are also baffled in jnana, mogha jnana. Mogha jnana means people are trying to endeavor to acquire knowledge. Everyone is trying to acquire knowledge. But it is not easy to acquire this knowledge of what is the ultimate truth. What is that is to be actually known, by which everything can be known. What is the most essential knowledge that one must acquire? It is very difficult to come to that conclusive understanding of what is that is the absolute truth. Therefore, most people, they are lost or defeated in the purpose of the life. They are defeated in the struggle for existence. They are struggling, but they are not able to overcome the struggle of existence. This is the condition of most common people. But then there are another category of people who have overcome the struggle for existence, who are not lost in the battle. In the battle means the material nature is posing a immense trouble. What is that trouble? That we have to all struggle in this existence. As long as a living entity is in the material world, there is a constant force of existential struggle. In order to eat, we have to cook. In order to cook, we need to buy something. In order to buy something, we have to go and work hard and make some money. Or if someone wants to grow his own food, he has to work day and night to produce the food so that he can have some food. So no activity in this world, there is nothing in this world where without struggle one can acquire, maintain one's own existence. On top of that, every living entity has so many more desires which entangles one into more and more into this material world, despite not being aware that it is my own desires, my own nations, my own ignorance is causing me so much trouble. The living entity is struggling hard and hard in this material existence. But then there are another kind of people who are not affected by this material existence. Who are those? They are said to be Mahatmanaha, the great souls. The great souls are not influenced by the struggle of material existence. Why is that? How is that everyone is struggling but someone is not struggling? What does that mean? So here the Lord is explaining what is the reason why they are able to overcome the so-called struggle for existence like the common people. Because they have taken shelter of Daivim Prakritim Ashritaha. So they are not under the influence of the material nature, but they are under the influence of divine nature. In other words, one who is protected by Lord and his internal energy, they are not affected by the turbulences or struggle for existence. Because they are completely assured that the protection of the Lord will take care of things. I don't have to be worried. So that's why you can see a sannyasi, he is meant to be fearless. Why is he fearless? A sannyasi must go to the forest alone. He must not depend upon any savings. He has to just go, beg alms, depend on the Lord. How is he fearless? Because he knows that the Supreme Lord is in my heart. Hriddeshe Arjuna Tishtati. Ishwaram Sarva Bhutanam. The Lord is seated in everyone's heart. He is seated in my heart. He is seated in the animal's heart. And therefore, Lord will guide me. So He is fearless. He is not worried. So whole material world is after these four existential things: eating, sleeping, mating and defending. And everyone is worried. Oh, what will happen to my eating? Somewhere or the other I need to store some food. Just like COVID came, people thought, oh, run to the store, save the food. Eating, sleeping, where can I buy a new house, a big house? Mating and defending. So every human being and even animals, they're struggling for these four basic necessities. In the common state of living, one's thinking, willing and feeling revolves around these four things. But a devotee of the Lord knows that I don't have to worry about these existential things. The Lord provides. The Lord provides. So I don't have to over endeavor for these things. I don't have to worry about these things. On the other hand, a common man cannot wrap his head around this. If I don't work hard, how do you think I will get anything? So, because when one is under the protection of the divine nature, the internal energy of the Lord, one sees the hand of the Lord in everything. One is not deluded. A person in knowledge. What is delusion? Delusion means to misunderstand something to be something else. To understand something else to be true while something else is actually true. So most people in this world are deluded. How they are deluded? They are deluded by this influence of material energy. The first delusion is that I am this body, and therefore if I do not work hard to take care of my body, there is no way I will live my life. So hook or crook, I will work hard to take care of my body. But one who is not deluded, he knows, see this bird. How is it living its life? Where is it getting food? Where is that big elephant getting the food? How is it sleeping? How is it making a nest? Who is teaching it to make a nest? How is it finding another male or female partner? And how it is also knowing how to escape from the enemy. Sometimes it is caught, sometimes it is not caught. But every living entity has got some ability to defend itself. Who is giving this ability? Where is it coming from? So, a living entity who is in knowledge recognizes, oh, it is the Lord who is providing, the Lord who is maintaining. Therefore, I do not have to overtly worry about my own necessities, especially the basic necessities of life. But this simple understanding is not possible. It is very, very hard. And because of this, we are deluded. We think, oh, only if I work hard, only if my abilities are employed, then only I can actually live. Similarly, there is another kind of delusion. The another kind of delusion is that if I satisfy my senses, then I will become happy. People are all deluded. They think that I should work hard and then engage all that I acquire to satisfy my senses. To satisfy my senses and senses of my family members, or my community members, or my country members. So all that I will do is to work hard, make some money, make some resources, and enjoy my senses to the highest degree. If I don't do that, then one thinks, oh, I will not be satisfied. I will not be satisfied. So the whole world is deluded by this false conception that somewhere or other, let me amass more and more wealth. 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. 1 million for myself, 1 million for my children, 1 million when I become old, and 1 million just a safety. So people are thinking, if I don't make millions and millions of dollars, then I will not be satisfied, I will not be peaceful, I will not be happy. So, in this way, everyone is trying somewhere or other to satisfy their senses. But actually, this is also false. Because of being influenced by material nature, we are thinking that taking shelter of these material things will actually solve our problems of life. So everyone is deluded to some degree or the other. As long as a living entity is born, one is born in ignorance. So a living entity thinks, okay, this is the way I should live my life. Therefore, I work hard and I encourage my children to also work hard so that they also go through the same struggle of existence. But here it is said that one who is deluded in this way does not get satisfaction, true satisfaction any time. But on the other hand, the way to find true knowledge or true things and not be deluded by false things is to come under the shelter of divine energy of the Lord. So the Lord has multiple energies. Parasya Shaktir Vivadaiva Shruyate. He has multiple potencies, many different kinds of energies. Amongst them, 3 are prominent, 3 are the most important. The one is the internal energy of the Lord. The 2, the marginal energy of the Lord. And 3, the external energy of the Lord. So the internal energy of the Lord is the spiritual energy of the Lord, which is very different from the other 2 kinds of energies. The marginal energy, the living entity, can come under the influence of either the internal energy of the Lord or the external energy of the Lord. Therefore, the living entity has this ability to be influenced by either the material or the spiritual energy. And the third energy, which is the external energy of the Lord, is the material energy of the Lord. That we saw in 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna explains how this world can be categorized into fundamentally 2 kinds of energies, the spiritual and the material. And the living entity and the Supreme Lord are of the spiritual nature, whereas the Supreme Lord is unaffected by material nature at any point of time. The living entity can come under the influence of the material energy. And therefore, as soon as one comes under the influence of the material energy, one becomes deluded. Deluded means one starts thinking in terms of material things. Okay, what is reality? Material world is reality. What is true? Material enjoyment is true. Who am I? I am this material body. What I am supposed to do? What is my duty? My duty is to satisfy my senses and the senses of my dear and near ones. So this is how a living entity becomes influenced under the material energy and starts assuming wrong duties, wrong ways of finding happiness, wrong goals of life, and is perpetually struggling. It's very hard for one to actually come out of this. Who has come out of this? A Mahatma is that soul, that great soul who has come out of this. So when we talk about Mahatmas, normally people think Mahatmas means for different people are Mahatmas. For a sports person, maybe that cricket player is a Mahatma. For someone who is a leader, maybe that person is a Mahatma. For someone else who's looking after technology, Steve Jobs or someone else, they are the great people. In this way, everyone in the world thinks someone else to be Mahatma or a great soul. We actually do not know who is a great soul, who is a Mahatma, whom should we follow. Everyone has some sort of other idol or a person whom they try to follow. And usually in this material world, if one is a karmi, a materialist, then one has one kind of followers, or one kind of great Mahatmas whom they think. And it is very important in one of the verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada writes in 17th chapter, Madhya Leela, in the conversation there, about the behavior of a devotee. How simply by the behavior of a devotee, a devotee, a pure devotee, a Mahatma, establishes the true purpose of religious principles. And in that, there is a description about how the word Mahatma is misunderstood, is described. So, for a common man, a businessman, one who is making the large amount of money is the one who is considered to be Mahatma. For someone who is seeking material enjoyment, for them, maybe some philosophers like Jaimini, they consider them to be Mahatmas. For yogis, they consider Patanjali to be a Mahajana. For atheists or for jnanis, they think atheist Kapila or Vasishta or Durvasa or Dattatreya, etc. to be Mahajanas or Mahatmas. For demons, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana's son, they are considered to be Mahatmas. For materialistic anthropologists, speculating on the evolution of the body, a person like Darwin is a Mahajana. So in this way, we see there are different people whom we adore. But it is said that all these people whom we are adoring, they are all influenced by the Krishna's external energy. They have no relationship with Krishna. They are only under the influence of material energy, and we think some great philosopher, historian, public speaker, Instagram, YouTube influencer to be actually a great person. So today's characteristic of a Mahatma is how much are you able to influence online? Are you able to get 1 million views? Oh yes, then you are a Mahatma. But this is not the criteria of Bhagavatam or the scriptures as who is considered to be a Mahatma. And why there are so many Mahatmas? There is a wonderful verse in Srimad Bhagavatam which says that why these people are considered to be Mahatmas. So the verse says, Shvavit Varaha Ushtra Kharai Samstuta Purusha Pashuhu Nayat Karna Pathopeto Jatu Nama Gadagraja. So it says, men who are like dogs, hogs, camels and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. So it is said that for a person, for a dog, the dog can appreciate the quality of another dog. For a camel, it appreciates the quality of another camel. So, basically what it means is that for a person who is materialistic, he can only appreciate the qualities of materialistic person. He cannot appreciate spiritual aspects. So, similarly, just like the camel eats its own blood and it takes pleasure in that. So, but Bhagavatam says that is not the criteria of judging. You cannot judge by, if a camel is judging by its own characteristic. But the Bhagavatam or the scripture says that is not the characteristic by which you judge the quality of a Mahatma. So, in the human form of life, the criteria of judgment for a Mahatma is different. It is not to acquire some material gain, not to get some philosophical knowledge. That is not the goal. The arthadam, the goal of life, the goal of the life is something else. And unless one does not recognize that goal of life and what one must actually do, one will consider someone or the other to be actually Mahatma. Therefore, the criteria that Srimad Bhagavatam gives, the criteria is that those men who listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna are actually to be considered Mahatmas, or the devotees who are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord are to be considered Mahatmas. Everyone else is not a Mahatma, because everyone else is driven by material energy. So, in this way, we see that different people have different reasons for accepting different people as material Mahatmas. So, Prabhupada also mentions at different points of time, sometimes people think great politicians to be Mahatma, sometimes people think someone else to be Mahatma. But the reason why they choose all these things is because they do not understand the value of devotional service. Once one understands the value of devotional service, then they will have a different criteria for understanding who is a Mahatma. So, in this verse, it is very nicely described as what is the criteria by which one has to be described as to be a Mahatma. So, the criteria is Daivim Prakritim Ashritaha. Daivim Prakritim Ashrita means one is influenced by the divine energy of the Lord. And how do we know that someone is under the divine energy of the Lord? Or when is that one comes under the divine energy of the Lord? One may say, oh, we all are in divine energy of the Lord. But the criteria to see whether one is in divine energy of the Lord or not is understood by their surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because anyone who is surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is immediately freed from the influence of material nature. So, we saw that verse in 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna explains how it is very hard to cross over this influence of modes of material nature. So there it is said, Daivi esha gunamayi mama maya doratyaya mam evaye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Daivi esha gunamayi mama maya doratyaya. So even from the Lord's perspective, even the material energy is his own energy. So it is also divine. Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya doratyaya. But it is very difficult for a living entity to cross over this divine energy, the external energy of the Lord. But there is one criteria, that mam evaye prapadyante, one who surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead can easily cross over it. So, as long as one is not able to cross over the material nature, the influence of the material nature, one has to acquire a material body. Because this material nature is said to be inferior. It does not have the real happiness that we are seeking. It does not have the real knowledge that we are seeking. And the eternity that we are seeking, they are not present under the influence of material nature. Therefore, it's like a living entity bound by a rope. He's constricted. He's not able to experience his real existence. Therefore, the living entity is not satisfied. And living entity is undergoing the struggle of existence again and again. But the Supreme Lord, under whose energy, under whose control this external energy is acting, who is binding us from experiencing our real life, can immediately free us from that influence as soon as we surrender to the Lord. And in this verse, Prabhupada emphasizes on the word Mam Eva. Prabhupada says Mam means unto Krishna or Vishnu only, not to some other demigods. Because That is the Vaishnava Siddhanta as given by the scriptures. They completely establish the supreme position of the Supreme Lord. Now this is very important to understand, because otherwise the real freedom that we are seeking is not possible. Because only Vishnu or Lord Krishna is the master of this material energy. And only on his order can the external energy not influence us, or one can be freed or released from the influence of the material energy. Otherwise, there is no possibility of freedom. Now, this is very important. Now, why is that the pure devotees of the Lord, why is that the Mahatmas, they take shelter of this internal energy of the Lord, but as we saw, they surrender. The surrender means they render devotional service. They accept things which are favorable for devotional service, and they give up things which are unfavorable for devotional service. Now, as soon as we see that sometimes we see how devotees are doing some extraordinary things. We cannot perceive how is it happening. He is chanting Hare Krishna in the morning, he is doing some arati in the evening. Now, how is he building a temple? How is he doing this? How is he doing that? Sometimes it's bewildering. A common man can never perceive. How is that Akshay Patra is feeding like 1.7 million children every day? How are these devotees handling this? What is happening here? One cannot perceive this because there is an influence of the internal energy of the Lord which is acting in the life of the devotee. This internal energy of the Lord is, when one comes under the influence of the internal energy of the Lord, one receives the favor of the Lord. And the whole training of Krishna consciousness is to help us overcome from this false delusion of different kinds of I am the body, I can enjoy my material senses to the extreme, and I know what is the goal of life, and the usual goal of life is to drink, eat and marry. But only when one comes under the shelter of another Mahatma, only then one understands how can one enter into this influence of material, influence of the internal energy of the Lord and away from the material energy of the Lord. And therefore, if we want to come under the influence of the internal energy of the Lord, we have to surrender to a pure devotee of the Lord. Because a pure devotee of the Lord is a representative of the Supreme Lord. So his instructions are not different from the instructions of the Lord. His purpose of giving instructions and guiding us is same as the instructions and the reason why Krishna appears. So surrender is the most important element for us to come under the shelter of the divine nature of the Lord. Now, what is this surrender? How do we acquire this surrender? So the first element to acquire this surrender is to have some faith and hear with open mind. Hear the instructions of the pure devotee of the Lord. And the pure devotee of the Lord gives the instructions of the Lord. So when one learns in the community of devotees, it helps us to apply this principle in practice. If we are not in the community of devotees, we do not know, although we know theoretically these principles, how to practically apply, because to render devotional service is not a theoretical idea, it's a practical service. How do I always engage myself in serving the mission of the Lord? How can I satisfy the senses of the Lord? This is an important principle. And the pure devotees of the Lord, they are constantly engaged. Bhajanti ananya manasaha. Without deviation of the mind, They are only trying to satisfy the senses of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. It is not easy to do without deviation, because we are so much influenced by the material energy, we get distracted very easily from satisfying the senses of the Lord. Because we do not know the value of rendering devotional service. Because the significance of devotional service can slip away from our mind. We can not realize that we are actually dealing with the Supreme Lord, who is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Sachidananda Vigraha. So that Supreme Person I'm dealing with, if I'm not aware, then I will not respect. Just like if some very, very big person comes here and I'm not aware that person is very big, very influential, I would treat him like an ordinary man. And he would think, oh, I wouldn't be present here next time. So similarly, when we get an opportunity to render devotional service, we should be very careful to value it. Why? Because when that opportunity of devotional service comes to us, that is an opportunity for us to come under the influence of the internal energy of the Lord. As soon as we are not careful, when we not value the devotional service that is coming to us, then we slip away into the influence of the material nature. Therefore, we should always hanker, how can I get an opportunity to do service? Because as soon as one comes under the influence of the internal energy of the Lord will propel one to do devotional service furthermore. That's why it is very hard for people to understand, how can you chant for 2 hours? Like yesterday, I was meeting some Chinese students at MIT, and I was trying to teach them how to chant. And they said, how many times? I said, we do it for 2 hours. They said, 2 hours? Impossible. Yes, actually it is impossible in this Kali Yuga to chant for 2 hours. But because of the internal energy of the Lord, the divine nature of the Lord, the divine holy name, which is full with Satchitananda energies, can propel one to chant continuously. But when we are not careful, when we are not mindful of the value of devotional service that we are obtaining, then we will miss out. Then we will miss out this experience of what it means to live a life influenced by the internal energy of the Lord. When one can experience the internal energy of the Lord, the life under the influence of the internal energy of the Lord, then one's life will be very, very different. There will be no delusion, there will be no mistaken understanding of one's existence. Clarity. So there will be no confusion, there will be no friction. The same external energy of the Lord, which puts one in trouble, supports one to render devotional service. As soon as we take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the same material energy which was creating so many obstacles for us to take to devotional life, the same material energy starts supporting us in our devotional service. So, Prabhupada says, this is the preliminary formula. The influence of our self-centeredness to satisfy our own senses, unless we don't understand the spiritual principles. The instruction of the spiritual master or the system in which it is coming is an entry point for us to get into the internal potency of the Lord, under the influence of the internal potency of the Lord. But as soon as we while away that opportunity to do a seva, we get again entangled in the material nature. So the pure devotees of the Lord are such that they never divert their attention outside Krishna. Their only one pointed focus is to serve Krishna. Because they completely know Krishna is the original Supreme Person. So to develop that faith, we have to have association of Srila Prabhupada. So hearing Srila Prabhupada's Vani, his books, discussing about the subject matter, helps one to come to one's real position and intensify that faith. I have to depend on Krishna always. I have to work day and night to satisfy Krishna. I have to work day and night to satisfy my